right before everyone's eyes. Imagine walking into a place where every eye turns against you, not because you did something wrong, but because of what they think you are. Imagine being treated as if you don't belong, even when your only wish is to share a warm meal, to be seen, to be respected. This is not just a story about a restaurant. It's about what happens when appearances define worth, and when kindness becomes a rare dish on the menu of life. Last night, right before everyone's eyes, a man was thrown out of an elegant restaurant by a waiter who believed he was poor. But what no one knew was that the man owned that very restaurant, and the only person who stood up for him was a little boy selling roses at the door. This story isn't fiction. It's a mirror, reflecting how quick we are to judge, how slow we are to listen, and how often we forget that true wealth lies in humility. If you believe the world needs more compassion, more awareness, and more courage to speak up against injustice, don't just watch this video. Be part of the message. Comment below what you would have done in that restaurant. Subscribe so we can reach more hearts together. Because every story shared can plant a seed of change. And now, close your eyes for a second. Picture yourself in that man's place, right before everyone's eyes, the man nobody wanted to serve. On a cold evening, a man walked into an elegant restaurant on the corner of the city's busiest street. The building had tall glass walls, golden lights, and a piano melody floating gently through the air. Inside, guests whispered over expensive meals, dressed in clothes that spoke of status and wealth. But when the man entered, the music of judgment was louder than the piano. He wore a dark jacket, old but clean, and shoes slightly dusty from walking. His face was calm, eyes soft, but his presence didn't match the polished floor or the smell of imported perfume. He walked quietly to an empty table near the window, the one where no one else wanted to sit because it faced the street. A waiter, young and proud, noticed him from behind the counter. He frowned immediately, as if the man's presence disturbed the air. "Excuse me, sir," the waiter said, approaching with a forced smile. "This section is reserved. You may want to try the cafe down the street." The man looked up gently. "Oh, I see. But I didn't notice any sign. I just wanted to have a meal." The waiter's tone turned sharp. "Our restaurant serves members and guests only. You understand, right?" The man nodded slowly, trying not to make a scene. "I can pay. Just a simple dinner." At another table, two women wearing jewelry glanced over and whispered. One laughed quietly. "He probably wandered in by mistake," she said, sipping her wine. The man heard, but he said nothing. Silence became his shield. Just then, a small boy entered the restaurant selling roses. His clothes were worn, his shoes torn, but his eyes were bright. "Roses, ma'am? Sir? Please, one rose to help." "My mother," he said, going from table to table. Most ignored him. One man waved his hand like he was swatting a fly. "Get out, boy. Don't bother our dinner." The waiter turned angrily. "You again? I told you not to come here." He grabbed the boy's arm and pushed him toward the door. The roses scattered across the floor, petals crushed beneath expensive shoes. The man at the window table stood up. "Hey, stop that," he said, his voice calm but firm. "He's just a child." The waiter glared. "Sir, you don't belong here, and neither does he. Please leave before I call security." Everyone turned their heads. The piano stopped. Eyes filled with quiet cruelty stared at the man and the boy. The man looked around, embarrassed, his hands trembling slightly. "I didn't come to cause trouble. I only wanted dinner." The boy looked up at him, frightened. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to." "It's okay," the man said softly. "It's not your fault." But the waiter had already called the manager, a tall man with a polished watch and a voice like ice. "We don't serve charity cases here," the manager said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Both of you, out." The boy looked down, picking up the fallen roses, his little fingers shaking. The man hesitated, then knelt to help him. Together, they gathered the flowers silently, while whispers spread across the restaurant like poison. "Imagine that helping a street boy," a man at the bar said, laughing. When they were done, the man stood, took one rose from the yellow bunch, and placed it on the table he had hoped to dine at. "Thank you for reminding me," he said quietly. "That kindness is no longer served here." The waiter's expression twisted in irritation. "Just go." As they stepped outside into the cold air, the boy's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, sir." "Because of me, they threw you out," the man smiled. "No, my little friend, they didn't throw me out. They threw out their humanity." They sat together on the steps outside the restaurant. The street lights flickered softly. The man handed the boy a few coins. "Buy yourself some food." The boy shook his head. "No, sir, you didn't even get to eat. You take it." The man looked at him with warmth. "You remind me of someone I used to know, a boy who believed goodness was enough to change the world." The boy smiled faintly. "My mother says the same thing." At that moment, a luxury car stopped near the restaurant. The waiter, standing inside the door, straightened his tie nervously. A group of businessmen stepped out, followed by a woman in a red coat. She glanced at the man and the boy on the steps, then entered without a word. The waiter whispered to her, "You won't believe who was just here?" Beggar pretending to be a customer. The woman's eyes narrowed. What did he look like? Tall, middle-aged, wearing an old jacket. He sat there. He pointed toward the window seat, right before you came. Her face went pale. "You fool," she whispered. "That's Mr. Carter." "Who?" the waiter asked. "The owner of this entire restaurant chain," she said, her voice trembling. "And your boss?" The waiter froze. His mouth opened, but no sound came. The piano music stopped again as the air turned heavy. Outside, the man Mr. Carter stood slowly, helping the boy gather his roses again. He smiled faintly. "Come with me," he said to the boy. "I think tonight we both deserve something better." They walked away from the golden lights and laughter, down the street toward a small diner glowing in warm yellow. There, no one cared about shoes or jackets. Only people and stories. Inside that humble diner, Mr. Carter sat with the boy. The waitress smiled kindly. "Good evening. What will you have?" Mr. Carter smiled back. "2 warm meals, please, and maybe some kindness on the side." As they ate, he watched the boy's joy, the way he savored every bite as if it were treasure. Mr. Carter felt something he hadn't felt in years. "Peace," he asked softly. "What's your name?" "Eli," the boy said, mouth full. "Well, Eli," Mr. Carter said, "you've done something remarkable tonight." "What's that?" the boy asked. "You reminded me what real wealth is." When truth walked back in, the next morning, sunlight poured through the tall glass walls of the same restaurant. The golden glow could not hide the cold tension that filled the place. The waiter stood at the counter, his hands shaking, while the manager scrolled nervously through his phone. The woman in the red coat was already there, waiting for Mr. Carter to arrive. No one had slept peacefully that night. Outside, the same little boy, Eli, stood by the door, holding a new bundle of fresh roses. His face was brighter than before. He had eaten well, slept in a small room that Mr. Carter had arranged for him, and even received clean clothes. When a car stopped in front of the restaurant, Eli's eyes widened. It was the same black luxury car from last night. Mr. Carter stepped out, this time wearing a crisp suit, the kind that could silence a room. His calm expression made the air heavy with guilt. He looked at the sign above the door, Carter's Fine Dining, and smiled faintly. "My name," he whispered to himself, "but not my spirit." As he entered, every sound in the restaurant seemed to vanish. The waiter straightened up, his lips trembling. "Sir, Mr. Carter, I didn't know it was you last night. I swear." Mr. Carter raised a hand gently. "No need for excuses. What happened last night told me everything I needed to know. Not about you, but about what my restaurant has become." The manager tried to speak. "Sir, we deeply apologize. It was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Mr. Carter interrupted softly. "When a man in plain clothes is treated as invisible, and a hungry child is thrown into the street, that's not a misunderstanding. That's a disease." No one dared to speak. The pianist sat frozen, the melody dying in his hands. Mr. Carter turned to the customers sitting at the tables. "I built this place years ago with a dream, that people from every walk of life could come, share food, and feel dignity. But what I saw last night was pride feeding on cruelty." He looked at the waiter. "Tell me, young man, when you saw me walk in, what did you think I was?" The waiter's voice cracked. I thought you were poor." "And that gave you power over me?" Carter asked. The waiter lowered his head. "I thought you didn't belong here." Mr. Carter sighed deeply. "We all belong to the same world, son. The only thing that separates us is how much kindness we can afford to show." He walked toward the boy, who was still standing by the door. "Eli, come here." The little boy approached shyly, clutching his roses. Mr. Carter placed a hand on his shoulder and turned to everyone. "This boy, who owns nothing but a handful of flowers, showed more grace than any of us last night. He is now under my care. From today, he won't be selling roses on the street. He will be learning, studying, and growing." Eli's eyes filled with tears. "Sir, I don't know how to thank you." "Live well," Carter said softly. "That's all the thanks I need." He then faced the staff again. "This restaurant will close for 1 week. And when it reopens, everything will change: the food, the rules, and most importantly, the hearts behind them. If anyone here thinks service is about power, they won't work here anymore." The staff exchanged nervous glances. The waiter spoke up hesitantly. "Sir, please, give me another chance. I want to make it right." Carter studied him for a long moment. "Then start today. There's a man sitting outside, wearing clothes like mine from last night. Bring him in, serve him a meal, and this time, serve him with respect." The waiter nodded quickly and ran out. A few minutes later, he returned with an old man, a passerby who had been collecting cans on the street. The restaurant fell silent again. Some guests looked uncomfortable, but Carter simply smiled. "Sit, my friend," he said to the old man. "You're welcome here." The old man's hands shook as he sat. I can't pay for this." Carter smiled kindly. "It's already paid for." Eli rushed to place a rose on the table. "And here, sir, something beautiful to go with your meal." A gentle laugh spread across the room. For the first time, the restaurant didn't smell like money. It smelled like humanity. Carter turned to the audience of shocked faces. "Let this place remind you, the way you treat those who have nothing says everything about what you have." Later that day, news of what happened spread quickly. Social media posts appeared with headlines like asterisk, "Millionaire owner tests his own staff, learns the true price of pride." Asterisk, people around the city began visiting the restaurant not for its luxury, but for its story. A week later, the doors reopened. The first thing guests saw wasn't a wine list or a price tag. It was a sign above the counter that read, "**, we serve respect first. The food comes after." Asterisk, asterisk. Eli stood proudly at the entrance, helping the new host. Greet people. He wore a neat shirt and held a tray of roses. Every guest received one with a smile. As the night went on, Mr. Carter watched quietly from his usual window seat, the same place where he had once been rejected. The piano began to play again, but this time it didn't sound like sadness. It sounded like redemption. Eli came over, carrying 2 cups of tea. For you, sir, he said. Thank you, Eli, Carter replied. You know, I used to think being rich meant owning things. Now I know it means owning peace. Eli smiled. You already have both. Mr. Carter looked around, his eyes soft. The laughter inside the restaurant now felt lighter, warmer. There was no whispering, no mocking, only life. He whispered to himself, right before everyone's eyes. The richest thing we ever had was kindness. And as the night continued, the boy who once sold roses stood beside the man who had built empires. 2 souls, different in age and fortune, but equal in heart. Somewhere between wealth and humility, they found what the world had forgotten, that money can buy a meal, but never the taste of dignity.